You know, the governor talks really slick and smooth about all these processes he's doing.
Can we just talk? I mean, I got to keep unpacking. I mean, there's a series of talking points. You hear a redundancy in terms of the talking points coming from my opponent.
The talk is cheap, Governor. You got to perform. You throw money at it, but you get no result. And the result is still the same.
All right.
Zero.
A state of emergency, and then we're going to magically solve fentanyl. Forgive me. Let me.
I'm not going to forgive you. It's the facts.
Governor, you're running ads for Proposition 1
Yep.
On abortion. You're running ads against Proposition 30, a tax hike to fund climate goals. You've got ads in Florida and Texas taking on Republican governors there. But with gas prices spiking, homelessness unabated, and people leaving California because it's too expensive, what's the case for voters giving you another 4 years?
Well, I think the case on Prop 1 is crystal clear, and the contrast with my opponent couldn't be more crystal clear. He does not support reproductive freedom, does not support reproductive choice, regardless of rape, regardless of incest. He's contributed $20,000 to defeat Proposition 1. I work with legislative leaders to get Proposition 1 on the ballot. It's foundational, the core values of the state of California, and something that I enthusiastically support.
But what about your record? That's really what I'm referring to.
As it relates to broader issues, I'm very proud of the fact that as we speak, we're sending out billions and billions of dollars in inflation checks. We're sending out $9.5 billion, to be exact, up to $1,050 for hardworking Californians to address the issues of inflation, address the issue of the cost of gas and food and other pressing issues in the state of California. As it relates to the broader issues, as it relates to climate change and the work we've done, we have no peers. California is leading the way. My opponents consistently opposed those efforts. In fact, you'll hear today, unquestionably, his efforts to reinforce big oil's talking points, double down on the efforts that put us in this very difficult place as it relates to the extreme weather and extreme drought that we are working through in the state of California. But I'm very proud of our record over the course of the last few years. I'm very proud of the work we've done to seed reforms into the future. I'm very proud of the efforts we're making as it relates to these ballot initiatives as well, particularly, again, on Proposition 1.
Well, Senator Dahle, many of the positions you do support are out of line with the majority of Californians. The governor mentioned abortion. We could talk about gun control, LGBT rights. Why should the majority of Californians give you a chance if they do disagree with you on some of these fundamental issues?
Well, first off, I want to thank Scott and Marisa for putting this debate together. And I want to start out by thanking the governor for taking time out of his going forward on his dream of being president of the United States and actually coming to California and having a debate. So I really appreciate, Governor, you taking the time out of your busy schedule to focus on those issues that we just talked about here in California. Number one, first, the governor talks about climate change, and he talks about the issues that are happening in California. And look, there's nobody that cares more about the climate than myself. I'm a farmer. I'm in tune with the climate every day, and it is changing, no doubt about it. But the policies that he's put forth aren't actually doing anything to help the climate. He is driving up the cost of gasoline and electricity. By the way, Californians pay 70% higher electricity rates than they do across the nation, $2.50 a gallon higher gasoline than they do in Nevada, just a few miles away from our state here, more than the state of Hawaii, which has no oil wells. People are fleeing California because they can't afford to live here. He's driving up the cost of everything in California, and I get calls in my office every day from hardworking Californians. In fact, just yesterday, I was at the gas pump, and a lady put $2.37 worth of gas in her car, a third of a gallon of gas. And Governor Newsom obviously doesn't care about the folks that are having to pay these high rates. So Californians are suffering. They're fleeing California. They're going to other states where he's campaigning nationally to expand on his California or his dream. Well, but Californians are suffering.
Go on.
I want to talk a little bit about doubling down on stupid. Doubling down on stupid is telling people that they're going to be forced into an electric car and then 2 days later saying that you can't charge your car. The policies that this governor's put forth don't work in California. Californians are suffering from the cost of living in California. Crime is running rampant. I know the governor talks about all this national stuff. He wants to talk about, a president that's not even in office. He wants to talk about our party. He wants to talk about everything but the facts of what I see and hear every day on the street. Californians are suffering because of your policies. I know that your friends and the people you run with don't actually can afford to live in California. but the everyday, hardworking, middle-class Californian governor is suffering from the policies you put forward. At the same time, we have no water. We have no electricity. We have no plan. Your plan, there is no plan. There's just throw money at it. You've had more money in the time you've been in office than there's ever been in California, and people are fleeing California. That's the facts. I know that you don't want to recognize that, and you want to talk about all these national issues because you can't talk about the facts that Californians are suffering because of high inflation and the policies that you've put forward.
California is suffering from high inflation, and that's why we've provided $18.5 billion in tax rebates, which you opposed. You opposed $9.5 billion in rebates that are going out right now to help offset these inflationary costs. The question to you is,
not true.
why did you oppose that budget? Why did you oppose that appropriation?
I supported that. You need to go look at the record. I actually supported that.
It's just not true.
Senator Dahle, let me ask a slightly different question. You have called, and your fellow Republicans, for a gas tax holiday to get rid of the 54 or so cent gas tax, but there's no guarantee that that'll end up in the pockets of consumers. So how do you propose the state bring down the gas price in a meaningful way for consumers?
Well, there's 1,200 oil wells sitting at the desk of the governor waiting to get permitted in California, and he prefers not to get those permits out.
But you've called for a gas tax holiday.
Yeah, well, the gas tax holiday is the fastest way you can actually help drive down inflation. I own a trucking business. In the last 8 months, because of the governor's policies, it's cost $200 a day to put diesel in that truck. It's $1,000 a week. It's $4,000 a month. That drives up the cost of a gallon of milk, a dozen eggs for every hardworking Californian. So if you lower that gas tax across the board, it lowers your food, not only the gas you put in your tank. So those are the policies we put forth. We had the budget to backfill to take care of the highways in California. We should have done that. It would have gave Californians and families about a $1,700 rebate a year ago.
But how do you guarantee that if the tax goes away, that it's actually going to go to consumers and not just to the oil companies?
Well, you make sure that it's dropped at the pump.
You can't.
How do you ensure that? I mean, they're private companies. They don't have any obligation.
The
to
biggest
government.
tax in California on gas and oil, the biggest profiter of it is the government. They make, actually, that's just the 54 cents is the highway tax. Right. All in, all government taxes is $1.42 a gallon.
So you guys wanted
gas.
to take all of those?
No,
things.
I'm just saying, at the end of the day, if you drop down the gas tax, you're dropping down across the board food for people and when you put gas in their car. And we'll force the companies to make sure that the money goes to actually lowering the price of a gallon of gas.
How do you force them?
Well, we make sure that they do it through their taxes that we push down.
As the state moves to phase out fossil fuels, what are you doing to make sure that places like Kern County, which rely heavily on oil for their economy, aren't being left behind? What do you say to workers there who are just worried about their ability to continue making a living?
We don't believe in a just transition rhetorically. We put $600 million in this year's budget. My opponent opposed that $600 million allocation to create a framework to provide support and economic opportunities in that region. We modeled it after something called Fresno Drive, which we launched a few years ago, and BK3, which is around the Kern County area in Bakersfield, a novel strategy to build partnerships, public-private partnerships, public-public partnerships. We added this $600 million appropriation so that we can drive a different conversation about what the world looks like in a post-oil future.
Can you talk about where that money goes?
This is important that we just put out, it goes to model programs like the Fresno Drive. The reason I bring up the Fresno Drive, it's a model example of partnerships between the universities, between the private sector, and local and regional, as well as state agencies, to drive a new economic and workforce vision for the region. It was such a success that we put those resources up, and we want to see those resources invested. That said, I'm also very proud to see the transition in Kern County already as one of the world's leaders in renewable energy because of our renewable energy policies, because the policy's been an accelerator of providing unprecedented investments in the state.
You know, the governor talks really slick and smooth about all these processes he's doing. He's had $100 billion in surplus revenue. And what he's done in the last 4 years is throw money at every single issue, more than there's ever been. And what are the results for Californians? Higher gas prices, inflation, homelessness on our streets, our schools are failing our children, and people are fleeing California. So I just want the listeners to understand that he's very good at talking about numbers and all the things he's doing. At the end of the day, you can't turn the water on in California. Electricity prices are 20% higher this year than they were last year in California, and people are fleeing California because the policies that this governor puts out, and he wants to demonize the party that I represent, and he wants to talk about those issues. But at the end of the day, he's been failing California, and Californians know it. Every day, Californians understand what's happening here in California, and the governor is focused on running for president, and he's going to leave California just like he left San Francisco, with homeless people all over the street, when he said he was going to solve those issues.
Let's see. Senator Dahle, question about labor. We have some of the strongest protections for workers in the nation, the 5th largest economy in the world. You've consistently voted against expanding labor protections for workers. As governor, which labor protections would you move to get rid of?
Well, I actually just want people to have a good relationship with their workforce. I actually employ people. I don't need a union representing my employees. We have a great relationship. And, the governor's really good at getting a lot of campaign contributions from these unions that support him, like California Teachers Association, where we saw they did everything to keep our kids out of school and lock our parents out while they were making sure funding his campaign. So he follows those unions. For labor, I want there to be a free market between the owners of the companies and their employees. It's good in California. We have more labor laws than anywhere. In fact, California labor people are actually people that work for other businesses are leaving California because they can't afford to live here, and their dollar goes further than in other states. California has 400,000 regulations, more than any other state in the nation. The closest state is New York with 300,000. There's 1,000 bills a year that get to the governor's desk. California is overregulated, overtaxed, and overpriced, and they can't afford to live here.
Yeah, can we just, I got to keep unpacking. There's a series of talking points. You hear a redundancy in terms of the talking points coming from my opponent. Let me unpack just on the issue of the economy. California has no peers. The state of California grew at 7.8% GDP last year, outperformed the United States, which was at 5.7%. We've created 569,000 jobs since 2019, and just this week, my opponent won't bring it up, I will. Once again, the lowest recorded unemployment in California history. Yes, we had a $101.4 billion operating surplus because of the entrepreneurial spirit and energy and innovation that is alive and well in the state of California. You continue to push down what we're trying to do on education, not surprisingly, because you opposed universal preschool. We have fully funded it. You opposed the $3.5 billion we put in to retain and support the professional development of our teachers. You opposed after school for all. You opposed summer school for all. You opposed 9-hour days and reimagining the school day. You oppose consistently all of these efforts, all of these reforms to give parents choice and to give kids a much more robust and comprehensive education. We have seeded transformative reforms, and I couldn't be more proud of those efforts, despite your consistent opposition and those of your colleagues.
Give Senator
year in
Dahle
and year out.
quick response, and then I want to move on.
Well, I want to address two issues. 300 companies' headquarters left California under his watch in the last 3 years. These aren't just some small, these are worldwide companies. Tesla, Oracle, HP have left California under his watch. He wants to talk about business in California, they're fleeing. I want to talk about education for a minute. The governor talks about all these programs he put forth, and yes, there is more money in our education system than there's ever been, Governor. That's a fact because of Prop 98. But 50,000 students didn't show up for school the first day in LA Unified School District this year. Why is that? Because the policies you put forward are pushing kids and parents away from the public school system because it's not teaching our children the things they need, like curriculum and ABCs. We're getting all kinds of other social stuff that's being shoved onto our children, and parents are leaving our system, and that's a fact. He throws money at everything, but everyday Californians and parents understand that they want an education for their children. It's not about money. It's about the policies and what grade scores we're getting. They're plummeting in California. California education system is 70%. Kids cannot read at grade level. 70% of the kids can't read at grade level, and that's due to the facts of the Teachers Association and your policies.
I take offense at our policies and strategies. I mean, what you identified are problems. We're identifying solutions every single day. High-dose tutoring, reading specialists. In high-poverty schools, providing more staff, changing staff ratios, community schools, the investments we're making after school and summer school that we know work, preschool, to allow people the opportunity to have that early start in life. All things you have consistently opposed, and we know these policies work.
But yet,
so with respect,
Why are the test scores so low?
Governor,
we
can I-
just made these investments in the last few years. I can't make up
course.
for the 10 years you've been in the legislature, but I can talk about my record in the last 3.5, 4 years as governor of California. And there's never been investments targeted at addressing these vexing issues like the investments we're making. And I have confidence they're going to work. And one thing I know, I have confidence you'll continue to oppose all of these common sense reforms.
Governor, it's true. There's been a huge investment in public education, and yet there are still huge challenges, teacher shortages, teacher burnout, families leaving public schools. You've chosen to put your kids in private schools. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go into a family decision like that, but what do you say to parents who wonder if you have faith in our public schools given that personal decision?
I'm passionate about public education. I'm a product of public education. My kids are going to school right behind our house, a Waldorf school, which is about creativity and critical thinking and the kinds of things that we're advancing in our public education system. And the approach we've taken is to provide that same kind of choice and opportunity that my kids are afforded for every single one of our 6+ million Californians going to public schools.
System is failing our students, and parents know it. They're leaving our education system. No doubt they are.
And
That's the fact. You can tell a lie as much as you want, but people are walking with their feet, and they know. It doesn't matter how many times you say it. It doesn't mean it's true. California parents are leaving our education system because it's so poor, and it's not been fixed under your watch or the watch before. And you want to blame anybody. You can't blame a Republican. Republicans haven't been in control in California for the last 10 years.
Well,
The result is still the same.
All right.
Zero.
Obviously, a lot to talk about with education, but we want to move along. Senator Dahle, you oppose abortion, and as governor, would have the veto power of the pen when it comes to the budget. This year, California's budget includes some $200 million in reproductive rights and protecting access to abortion. If you were governor, would you remove that sort of spending if the legislature puts it in the budget?
Well, first off, I want to say yes, I am pro-life, number one. Number two, I want to talk about Prop 1, and he brought that out in the opening statements.
But the question is about the budget, just to be clear.
As governor.
As governor.
Well, the governor put $200 million in there to pay for abortions for people from out of our state to come here. That's number one. Number two, the law today is 6 months. You can have an abortion up to 6 months. The governor proposed Prop 1, and the legislature put it on the ballot to expand abortion to the minute before birth. That's what it would be in California. At the same time, he wants to make this a sanctuary state where all of Americans can come here and get an abortion at the expense of California taxpayers. So absolutely fund reproductive services, but I am not going to fund out-of-state abortions.
What about in-state abortions?
No, I will propose that, yes, I'm pro-life. I don't think we should. Reproductive services, absolutely prefer.
So you'll take out of the budget any help with women?
Right, I have to get that
abortions.
through no governor has full control over the budget. He has to work with the legislature, and I'll work with the legislature to put a budget together that will work for California.
Would you allow abortion funding in a budget you sign?
If that's what it takes to get the deal done, I'll sign a budget that I work through with the legislature. I'm a third of the budget.
We're going to move along. We are in the 4th year of a drought, and unlike Governor Brown, Governor Newsom, you have not issued an executive order mandating statewide restrictions on water use. You're leaving it to local water districts to make the hard decisions, and it doesn't seem to be working. In fact, the State Water Board's conservation manager recently quit, accusing your administration of, quote, a gut-wrenching unwillingness to take big steps to reduce water use. So the question is, why have you not been more aggressive in ordering water conservation?
We have. There's the 436 agencies have.
But that leads to a lot of mixed messages.
Hardly. Just the opposite. In 2012 to 2016, the last drought, we put out a comprehensive report, provided it to my opponent in the legislature, lessons learned from the drought. One of the principal lessons learned is hydrology is different in every region of the state. What the water agencies requested of us as the basis of a deeper understanding is that we provide flexibility, what they refer to as level 2 plans 436 water agencies move forward with that mandate of mandates. We've seen 11% reductions in that use. We also put out a detailed, comprehensive plan as it relates to not just water conservation, but framework of abundance to invest $8.8 billion on new strategies and approaches to create more water, wastewater, stormwater capture, diversion efforts, and the like. So
But why
the
not, as
lessons
governor?
learned-
Why not, as governor, use your authority to order, to give a sense of urgency
Why
about
would
the
I
situation?
do? What was the point of an after-action report that analyzed the best practices of the previous drought and made a recommendation not to do one size fits all as it relates to a mandate, where the conditions in Riverside County are completely different than the conditions here in San Francisco County? And that's why we moved forward with the flexibility that was recommended in that plan, and it's proven successful. 11% reductions. The differentiation between regions now affords new strategies, and it's consistent, again, with what was promoted
But
in
clearly
that
these
report.
local water agencies are not all giving the message.
Well, most are, and I want to just applaud Californians. In the aggregate, 11% reduction, some doing far
Is that
superior.
enough?
We have to do a little bit more, but I will say this. We came into this drought using per capita 16% less water use than we went into the last drought. Here's what I, though, believe, and this is important. It's not just a mindset of scarcity. It's also about creating more water, and that's what our specific strategy set forth in our water plan. We have 37 desalination plants in the state. We want more. We're promoting different strategies on conveyance and groundwater capture, different strategies specific on storage, below ground, not just above ground storage. And we've invested, despite my opponent's opposition, some $8.8 billion to advance this cause, unprecedented general fund support, and again, consistent with his previous record on topics we've discussed today. He opposes those investments.
Senator Dahle.
What would you
All
do?
right, number one, this guy, I supported Proposition 1 in 2014, which was a water bond, $2.7 billion to build Sites Reservoir. Temperance Flat was on the table at the time. We have doubled our population in the last 30 years, and we have not increased our water supply. We only have ration. And I want to talk about the facts. The fact my district represents 60% of California's water comes from my district. I have Shasta, Oroville, and Folsom dams all in my district. By the way, 2018 was the wettest year recorded in the history of our state since we've been keeping records. The Oroville spillway broke because we had so much water in California. We need to capture that water, and we need to save it for the times when we don't have water, like right now. And that's the goal of California's Historic. The governor talks about it. He talks about rationing. He talks about all these things, not money and throwing it out. But what is the result? What have we actually achieved? In 4 years, not one shovelful of dirt when we've had $2.7 billion to build a reservoir, Sites Reservoir, which environmentalists love, municipalities love, and farmers love. Why aren't we building it? You know, the talk is cheap, Governor. You gotta perform. You throw money at it, but you get no result. Your policies don't end up with results. And Californians know that. We have to suffer. We're in a constant state of crisis under your leadership. All right. Your leadership has not solved one problem. We have fires that you haven't solved. We have storage you haven't solved. We have electricity you haven't solved. All those things you talk about, but what are the results? Zero. And Californians are suffering with the cost of living and rationing and all those things, and they're leaving our state. And Californians, we can have a California dream and make it a reality if we had some change in leadership.
Let me push you on homelessness. It is fair to say that the state has done more to address it in the last 4 years than potentially ever before. And yet, the visible issues of encampments and homelessness and street behavior and drug use appears to be worse than ever in many places around this state. What do you say to voters who feel like this is not getting better?
They're right. It's an outrage. It's unconscionable what's happening on the streets and sidewalks. That's why we're requiring accountability plans. I have 75 accountability plans. We're not going to hand out any money any longer. Local governments can't produce real results. We provided them $750 million of encampment grants to address the issue of encampments. We're providing them new tools with a care court to address the vexing issues of mental health. Of course, my opponent opposed the funding for care court. We provided them unprecedented strategies, home key and room key, that have allowed us to get 68,000 people off the streets, 12,500 new units have been procured
So what
just
is it?
in the
Are
last
more
number
people
of months.
becoming homeless, do you
The
believe?
bottom line, in the last 2 years with COVID and all of the headwinds of COVID, there was a laissez-faire attitude in terms of addressing what was happening on the streets and sidewalks. But you're right. The premise of your question is accurate. When I got here, there was no homeless strategy, no plan, no resources of any merit. Today, there's $15.3 billion. There's a real strategy, real plan, and there's accountability for the first time. All of that opposed by my opponent consistently, nowhere to be found. His entire policy for homelessness is some illusory policy of, well, we'll just do an audit. I've been around long enough to know when someone says their response to a problem is an audit, they don't have a response.
All right, Senator Dahle, you have been very critical of the governor's response to homelessness, and I noticed that just last week you joined your Republican colleagues to call on the legislature and governor to declare a state of emergency and ban encampments within 1,000 feet of sensitive areas. Would that solve homelessness?
Well, at least it will help children who are going to school be able to be free and be safe to get to school where there's a homeless encampments around schools. But I want to talk about homeless for a minute. There's a theme here. The governor talks about my party and all the things that are happening, but the theme is that he throws money at everything. But what are the results? Exactly. What are the results? He spent $20 billion, $75,000 per homeless person, and we have 22,000 more. It is growing. Absolutely, we know the number. 22,000 more. So the theme of this debate is that the governor has all this great talk, but the policies don't actually fix the problem. If you want to tackle homeless, I was a county supervisor for 16 years. He said in 2003, when he was the mayor of San Francisco, he was going to end homelessness. I just drove down the street here today, stepping over people defecating on the street and needles. He hasn't fixed it.
What would you not do that the state's doing now?
I would do, number one, about 75% of the people that are homeless are addicted to drugs. I would, day one as governor, I would make fentanyl a state of emergency and tackle fentanyl. 5,700 people died from fentanyl in California. Twice the amount of people in this city.
What would a state emergency do? I want to understand.
It would focus on the fact that fentanyl is an issue in California. People on the streets are addicted. We need to get them off of drugs. That's the first thing you do to get them on the projection out, is get them off of drugs. Fund the counties with the mental health programs that they need and the clinicians, and then drive down the cost of housing in California are the three things that would need to happen to take care of homelessness.
And then a state of emergency, and then we're going to magically solve fentanyl. That's what my opponent just said. Somehow, magically it will disappear on the basis of a state of emergency, that somehow he will adopt a secret strategy that somehow will absolve any deep accountability for the fact he's consistently opposed our efforts to address fentanyl. Let me be more specific.
What have you put
You
forward?
opposed the budget that we just advanced of $7.9 million in the Department of Justice for 25 new people to create a new criminal investigations unit. You opposed the National Guard, of which we have 100 National Guard on the border addressing fentanyl. And you know what? You should know this. You're unaware of this. 14,000 pounds of fentanyl we've gotten off the street, 238 search warrants that we provided in the last year. It's an 238% increase over the previous years because of our efforts. We put out a strategy not just on interdiction, which you opposed, but also a strategy that relates to fentanyl and opioid abuse, which you opposed, which is a strategic plan with 40 state agencies and nonprofit partners. You oppose the funding for that focuses on treatment and prevention, and it focuses on new strategies for managing pain. You opposed all of those things.
Okay.
Senator, quick question or quick response.
Plus, he's talking about me. Yeah, I opposed his budget because he spends money with no results, and all the things he talks about don't ever achieve results. And so when he's talking about fentanyl and all these things, really walk down the street. I just ask Californians to walk down the street, look in your neighborhoods. You know the difference that this governor is really smooth at talking, but at the end of the day, he delivers zero.
All right, we're going to move along. If you're elected governor, the legislature is likely to remain in Democratic hands, and so but there are some things a Republican governor could do. Governor Newsom, for example, issued a moratorium on executions. There's now 36 people on death row that have exhausted their legal appeals and would be eligible for execution. If you're elected, would you end the moratorium and allow those executions to go forward?
Yes.
How and when? And
I'll just take.
How does that square with your pro-life position? I'm curious.
Look, they've committed a crime against other people, and a jury chose to. I support the death penalty.
Would you have any qualms about 36 people being executed on your watch?
Well, I don't know that they're going to be executed under my watch, but if the courts have held them up to be in for life, they need to be in for life, and they face the death penalty.
All right, I want to ask the governor about Proposition 47. This is a 2014 ballot measure that has become a real political lightning rod in California. It made possessions of small amounts of drugs a misdemeanor and made it more difficult to charge someone with felony theft. Law enforcement and Republicans often blame this ballot measure for an increase in shoplifting. I think the data is very mixed, and there's been no proof that it's increased violent crime. Your administration says it saved taxpayers $161 million this year. I wonder if you have any regrets about supporting Prop 47 or support any changes to it.
No, the narratives don't fit the facts. We're average in terms of that felony threshold. There's 30 states with a 950, 30 states that have the same or higher threshold. I mean, the reality at the end of the day, they've used it as a scapegoat, to excuse their, they oppose all of these criminal justice reform efforts. He's consistently opposed all of these reform efforts. We believe in common sense criminal justice reform. The reality is he also opposed our crime reduction plan, $758 million investment that, by the way, included 1,000 new CHP officers, which you opposed, $55 million to address their wellness and mental health, which you opposed, $200 million for crime prevention, evidence-based crime prevention plans and strategies, or rather grants for strategies, which you opposed. We've put out detailed strategies to address this issue. And this issue remains a vexing issue, but Prop 47 is not the culprit. It's not the reason why we have seen an increase in crime in this state and or in this country.
Senator Dahle, you opposed Prop 47.
Yes, absolutely, I did. Murders went up 40% in the last 2 years in California. Gavin Newsom let out 30,000 prisoners out of prison. That's a fact.
I have no authority to let anyone out, so that's not a fact.
The other thing is that he did support the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, which allows you to rape an unconscious woman, and it's not a violent crime in California.
Well, that's
violent.
the only. If you only get that as a enhancement, but not an underlying rape charge.
So we actually brought a bill together this year to actually make sex trafficking of a woman and rape of an unconscious woman a felony, and his administration killed that bill.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Governor, in 2020, you emphatically supported and signed a bill to create a reparations task force. Will you support their recommendations, including monetary payments, when the task force finishes its work?
No, I want to see the recommendations. By definition, we created the work group to adjudicate the merits and demerits of different strategies. Now, what I have done is I've supported, I think, very common sense strategies, including the reparation that we did advance on Bruce's Beach, a family that was denied their inheritance, a business that was taken away by the people of the city council in Santa Monica years and years ago. It was a point of deep pride that we moved to right that wrong. And so this task force is convening. We'll see where their recommendations come out, and we'll make a determination after the fact.
Do you want to add anything on reparations?
I actually supported the reparations study as well, and I also supported the Bruce's Beach legislation. I think it's it's step in the right direction.
We found one thing you two agree on.
Those people were wronged, and we made it right.
All right.
I invited the governor to come fishing with me. He didn't take me up on it, but I believe in working together and getting things done with people and listening more and understanding that there's two sides to every story. And when you find out the other side, you can have more compassion, you can understand, you can learn from it. And that's what I've done in the legislature over years, is find the things we can work on and the things we disagree on. We set them in the parking lot till we can move California in a direction.
Think you might go fishing after this?
Yeah,
you guys did agree on one thing.
He knows I love fishing. Look, we all want to be respected. We all want to be connected in some way, shape, or form. We want to love. We all want to be loved. And we're on a journey together. And so, I appreciate it. It's a nice way to end this debate. And I think we're going to have to find these commonalities into the future. I mean, regardless of this debate or the debates that are being had across the dinner table and Thanksgiving soon as it relates to which direction in this country or in this state, at the end of the day, we all have so many things fundamentally in common. And those are the things we should be focused on and move forward together.
Senator Dahle, you as well.
Well, yeah, I just want to say thanks to the governor for the debate. I want to just say to Californians, look, if you like what you've been getting for the last 4 years, stick with him. If you like change and you want something different, California head in a direction where you can make that dream a reality, the California
All right.
dream, stick with it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Governor got the first word, Senator got the last one. Thank you to both candidates, Gavin Newsom, Brian Dahle. We really appreciate you participating in this lively conversation about the future of California as we head into this election for governor.
And thanks to our listeners and viewers for tuning in across the state and to our partner stations who helped make it all possible.